Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome back to Truth Be Told, Living with MS. I'm Marie Herron, your host. I want to thank you all again for the comments and the posts. I've had some amazing conversations on our Facebook page with some of you, and thank you for some of the ideas for programming that you'd like us to take on in the new year. Today I have in studio with me Stephen Largy, who is a senior consultant and president of On Disabilities. The next few programs are going to be about employment and people with disabilities, keeping and maintaining, retaining employment. And Stephen is someone who is definitely a leader in the field here in Ontario. So we're really excited to have him in studio. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Wanted to first, do you want to tell us a little bit about On Disabilities?
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. We're consultants and trainers, and we specialize in employability skills, disabilities in the workplace, workplace accommodation, and creating truly inclusive workplaces. We focus heavily on helping businesses to develop a better understanding and awareness about disability employment and develop a higher level of comfort and confidence in recruiting, hiring, training, and managing people with disabilities. You might also be interested in knowing that On Disabilities' tagline is "Disability does not equal inability."
Great. Well, I hear a lot, as you know, I work in employment services, and we hear a lot of talk about a great emphasis, a lot of money being placed on, hiring people with disabilities. Has there been any improvement in attitudes around hiring people with persons with disabilities?
Well, there has been improvement in the area of talk. People are a little bit more aware of the issue. They are talking about it a little bit more. But in reality, the actual hiring of people with disabilities is still a huge challenge. And that's still evidenced in the fact that people with disabilities are still in the 50 to 55% unemployment range. And that people who with disabilities are trying to get those jobs but are not being given the opportunities.
Okay, and what about the Accessibility for Ontarians Disability Act and diversity hiring initiatives? Is that not moving anything?
Well, they're certainly both good initiatives. Mm-hmm. The AODA and diversity hiring are well-intentioned. They're good plans, but they require a huge shift, both a cultural and generational shift. So they're not wrong in anything they say, but what happens is they make good conversation, but we're not getting to that next step. As a matter of fact, in diversity hiring, people with disabilities are very often at the bottom of that list as well. So it's a huge challenge. At On Disabilities, we don't even talk about diversity hiring. What we talk about is disability and diversity hiring.
Okay, because again, from where I'm coming from as an employment person, we know that there's just such a shortage of good workers, and I know that people with disabilities are good workers. So what's the solution of getting the two together, the workers and the people who need them?
Well, our primary focus is educating employers. We need a higher level of education and awareness for employers. What we have to do is that we have to help the employers to feel more comfortable and confident in what they're doing. And that starts right from the very first step, which is recruitment. There are a lot of people with disabilities out there who are very well trained, who are very smart, who have a very good work ethic. But the problem is, because they're a person with a disability, there's this perception that they can't function in the workplace. And that's a totally wrong perception. As a matter of fact, there's statistical evidence that shows that people with disabilities are actually performing in the workplace better than many
Yeah, I think you and I were talking about that when we first met. You had given me a really good example of an employee. I think that was at was it Tim Hortons?
Well, I have so many examples.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, maybe you can share an example. I can definitely
think right immediately as we sit here and talk. I can think of 4 or 5 people immediately, who are very successful in the workplace, who demonstrate excellent work ethic. Okay, and most importantly, they're very reliable and they're effective in their jobs. And the fact that they're in the workplace and performing just like everybody else is just further evidence that people with disabilities are just like anybody else. And their disability really has nothing to do with their ability to work.
Right.
All right. That's something they've been dealt, whether it's an acquired disability or something that they were born with. And in most cases, people with disabilities develop the personal coping strategies and the think outside the box attitude so that their disability doesn't really cause an obstacle or a hampering for them. Right.
Okay, terrific. When you say, what do you mean when you say common sense and good business sense?
Well, when you start thinking about the idea of inclusion in the workplace, disability inclusion in the workplace, there are so many myths, misconceptions, and misinformation out there that it's easy to get bogged down in that.
Right.
And in actual fact, it's common sense to say, yes, we can hire someone who's a person with a disability. They can perform the job. They're a member of our team. They're an effective part of our business. And the common sense part comes in is that if that person is out there, why would you not consider hiring them? The population in Canada, from 16 to 65, about 17% of that population are people with disabilities.
17%.
About 17%.
Okay.
Now, that can fluctuate. You're going to get different opinions on that, but I'm basically saying that non-institutionalized people with disabilities capable of being in the workforce represents about 17% of our population. Now, you can play with statistics any way you want because you can make statistics say what you want them to, but the reality is that in that 17% of our population, it is totally illogical to think that there is not a very good talent pool there.
And yet it's being overlooked.
Completely overlooked.
Okay. So let's just touch on this. Why do you think it's being overlooked? Is it fear? Is it
there's a lot of
misunderstanding?
There's definitely a lot of misinformation out there, but yes, there is fear. There's fear on the part of the employers, and the problem with that is that the employers, they want to do the right thing. There's no employer that's going out there and saying, I'm not going to do this just because I'm mean. That's not reality.
Right.
All right. The employers want to run their business both effectively and profitably. Mm-hmm. And as long as that happens, then they're pretty much open to anything. And employers look for innovation. They look for initiative. They look for new ideas. And so they're not going to discount people with disabilities because of that. But what does happen is that the employers are dealing with that misinformation, and they tend to be approaching inclusion in the workplace from a stance of political correctness, compliance, and fear.
Okay.
Almost all of that based on misinformation and misperception, shall we say.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. One of the things that I know very well, because I did work in banking, is the whole ROI, return on investment, and I definitely relate to that. Tell me what you mean by, you said ROI is not return on investment for this particular topic. It's return on inclusion. And can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by return on inclusion?
Yes, definitely. Now, every businessman knows about ROI, and you hear it all the time.
Yes, return on investment.
Okay, and that's their return on the investment, and you measure the success and the growth of your business by the ROI. Right. But what happens is there is statistical evidence that shows that people with disabilities in the workplace are succeeding. And it's taken a number of years, but that evidence has been collected, compiled, but now you're seeing it reported a whole lot more. And what happens is that in a company that is inclusive, in a company that includes people with disabilities as a part of their workforce, they're seeing some excellent returns. And these are returns that are measurable and quantifiable and relate directly to a business's ROI. And as an example, I mean, I can give you a few of those. In terms of regarding that business, today's youth are a huge market, a lot of talent, a lot of ability, all right? And 70% of today's youth between the age of 18 and 26 say that a company's commitment to the community, including the hiring of a diverse workforce, has an influence on their decision to work at that company. So, do you not want the cream of the crop looking to work at your company? A DuPont study in the United States showed that 90% of people with disabilities rated average or better on job performance.
Okay. So, Stephen, employers will be listening to this. People with disabilities will be listening to this podcast. Where would they be able to? Would they be able to reach you to get this information, or would they be able to look it up? Because it's very powerful when you're saying that people with disabilities do work harder or do have a greater degree of retention in the workplace. And these are great statistics. How would employers be able to research that, or would they just call you?
Well, they can definitely call me. Our website is tqskills.com/on-disabilities. So they can definitely contact us that way. They can contact me by phone. We're on the web. However, another good source is the Canadian Business Sensibility website.
Okay.
And that's an organization that's based in the GTA, and there is a lot of very good information there. You can also check the Discoverability Network, and the Discoverability Network is attempting to connect, to be the liaison between academia, people with disabilities, and business. And again, lots of information there. So the information is out there, and you have to sort of go look for it. But that's also part of what we do, is that we save you the looking for it. We'll bring it right to you.
Wonderful. I have two questions. First of all, what do we want to take away from this discussion? What do you want to take away?
Well, the most important thing to take away is that, one, I think that employers are the real solution for disability hiring. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that you can legislate or advocate inclusion. All right? You definitely do want to advocate for it, but it's not going to happen simply because people say it must happen. The same way with legislation. Legislation is good. It's the AODA, for instance, is a good guideline, but it's based on a 25-year generational shift.
Right.
Okay, and there's also a lot of history that you can look into in the ADA in the United States. It's considerably older. It's about 27 years old now, but they've had a lot of, shall we say, slopes and valleys, and they've had to struggle with that as well.
Right.
But a very interesting fact is, out of Cornell University, there's a study that shows that disability employment, again for non-institutionalized people with disabilities who are capable of working, mm-hmm. is actually lower today than it was in the early 2000s when the ADA took place.
Okay.
Now, the explanation for that is not entirely clear. All right. However, when they're reporting those stats, it shows that maybe we're aware, but maybe we're not moving forward enough.
Last question, and I know that you would know the answer because you've done so much research. In my research, I see that different countries around the world have different ways of moving forward with inclusion. What's one of the best models you've seen so far, and what country? I'm pretty impressed with what's going on in Australia. Okay. Now, in the United States as well is doing very well. I'm going to say there are a lot of opportunities that are created, but I like the Australian model because there tends to be what I'm going to say is a little bit more of a common sense approach to it, and there are some excellent resources in Australia as well. And luckily, due to technology today, I connect with those on a pretty regular basis, so I do get the news. There are good examples out there. There's a lot of good information out there. And what we need to do is that we need to be aware of that.
and we need to embrace it, and we need to take action now.
Okay.
Not in 2025 or 2030. All right, we need to start moving forward now.
So to companies out there right now who are at this time of year moving towards building their strategic plan for the next 2 to 5 years, what would you say are the top 3 things they would have to put into place to ensure that they're inclusive over the next 5 years?
Well, probably one of the first things that they would have to put in place is the political will to say we're going to do this.
Right.
Okay. The second thing would be to stop worrying about the political correctness and the compliance aspect of it and start training your people to understand and be comfortable with the idea of disability hiring. And as a very good example of that, we're more than happy to work with CEOs, presidents, vice presidents, but the people that we would truly love to be training are the frontline managers, supervisors, and HR people that are the first ones to come in contact with people with disabilities and the one to most often deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
Stephen, I want to thank you so very much for coming in today.
Most definitely my pleasure.
I think it's very important. I think this discussion is one of the most important we've had so far on the podcast. And I'm looking forward to, supporting you in any way we can to, move this agenda forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sometimes it frightens me.